Hello, Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagay. Well, the green machine just had a huge wrench thrown in the cogs of not only the propaganda, but the reality of, well, what's really been going on, and the lies, just straight out lies that every single Liberal for the last 10 years, even with their new puppet master, Carney, taking the reins, who, by the way, is profiting millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, which we're going to dabble a little bit on that here today as well. But also, Eby. Eby comes unglued. He doesn't know what to do. He's got more debt. This man has completely destroyed British Columbia. He's also, well, he might as well be a Liberal. And if you're new to the channel, check out the previous episodes, because this guy should never have been allowed to run in politics. He is part of and is surrounded by the same people as Justin, as Carney, as the Liberals. And yes, this dabbles right down into the foreign interference. This dabbles into literally the Chinese CCP party, the takeover of like real estate in BC especially, the drugs, just every single part of the destruction of the last 10 years. This guy he's the puppet for it. He's just another one of these green zealots who doesn't care about you. He doesn't care. And he comes unglued. He comes unglued today. As Daniel Smith proves, there are companies that would love to build, but can't, because they're not going to risk investment money in a country who's got the stupidest rules there are on the face of the planet. And in the meantime, Carney and all of these guys' supporters are out investing out in blood oil. And that goes for all you teachers out there. Look into your damn pensions. Out east, this goes right to Quebec. Take a look at your pensions. They switched you over Brookfield. Brookfield took your pensions. They pulled everything out of the West because they knew what they were doing. You are making money off of Canada's demise. Yes, you are. Previous episodes. Now, let's just kind of get started with, first of all, a reality check of where Canada is. Now, of course, my subscribers aren't going to be shocked, but if you're new, hang on to your hats.
Thank you for having me.
So the Business Council of Canada is saying Canada is in an investment crisis. Let's start there. Can you explain why?
Well, I mean, businesses aren't investing enough in this country, and this is not a recent trend. I mean, this has been going on for a decade now. It's just that the recent geopolitics, the trade disputes, the trade wars we've been seeing this year has just exposed our economy to the fact that we're vulnerable to shocks because we haven't been investing in this economy. And the reason why we haven't been investing in this economy is because the investment environment hasn't been there. The government for almost a decade now hasn't been putting in place the conditions to really incent businesses to invest more in this economy.
Yeah, the budget coming out November 4th, so it's still about a month away. But we do have some expected numbers out, right? The interim parliamentary budget officer said last week that the federal deficit could be at $68.5 billion this year, which is up from more than $51 billion last year. You say, the government better have a plan to kind of address debt. Do you think it does have a plan?
Well, we'll see. We think that having a credible plan that includes meaningful reductions in the deficit year over year from what look like are going to be very high levels over the next, well, certainly this year and perhaps next year as well. I mean, we think having a credible plan, and credible, I mean credible for markets, is important to keep to have a very positive investment environment. If people start questioning the credibility of the fiscal plan and Canada's ability to meet its, interest payments, for example, then, we will see an environment for investment that will deteriorate dramatically, and we can't afford that. So we do need.
Now, this whole title is Canada is in an investment crisis. This is the Business Council of Canada. They've come out swinging. It hasn't. It has nothing to do with 10 years or earlier. This has all come down in the last 10 years. It's getting to the point where so many companies are either going bankrupt or fleeing that even the global corporations won't invest here unless they're part of Brookfield, which is what we're seeing, or part of the hierarchy within the Laurentian elite. Canada is in huge trouble.
Okay, if the country was to keep taking on more debt, hypothetically, what are some of the real consequences that come with that?
Well, you'll see interest payments on that debt increase. You become vulnerable to interest rate movements, for example. So if global interest rates rise, our interest payments will increase. But, just the fact that the stock of debt is rising will mean more of the revenue that the government collects goes towards paying off bondholders rather than doing the things that government should be doing, whether it's investing or having enough money to provide the social programs that we all love. So it's very important that we have a credible plan, because if we don't, then the trajectory is not a good trajectory.
For sure.
And as always, I post all the links for everything within the description. I urge you to watch this because he's sounding the alarm. He's being quite nice, as most of the time you find these people are. But the reality of what he's saying is there. Canada's in big trouble. Now, of course, we all know this. We all know this. It's 10 years of liberal destruction. So it is what it is. The budgetary officer came out, the PBO, and he pretty much said it. Like, he's sounding the alarms. We are on a fiscal cliff. The Liberals are building a ramp, and they have us full speed ahead, getting ready to drop us off the top. This is scary times, people. Absolutely insane. So let's get going on here with Eby and his tirade, and then we're just gonna debunk everything about this guy, because he's a POS. Like, he really is. He's just. It's too bad that the Conservative Party is in such disarray. There is a new party. I'm really hoping that a lot more of the truer Conservatives leave the so-called Rustad government and join up, and they can do it in time, because this government has to fall. BC, you've allowed this guy, because of propaganda, that's how this guy got in, just the same way the Liberals did, to almost bankrupt you guys. Your debt, you're broke, and I'm going to show you just how broke here in a moment. Let's just listen to this child.
Talking about grade 5, I know one of the things you learn in grade 5 is about being good to your neighbor. Your neighbor in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith, is expected this afternoon to announce they are starting a Crown Corporation to be the proponent for a new pipeline. In your estimation, what does the province of Alberta now need to do to engage with British Columbia around moving oil through our province to the coast near Prince Rupert?
Well, I guess, it's neighborly relations are crucial between Alberta and British Columbia.
Now, pay close attention, because as we progress through this and we compare it to what's actually going on in Alberta, this is beautiful. Watch him literally eat his own words.
And that's a relationship that needs to go both ways. British Columbia has literally tens of billions of dollars of real private sector shovel-ready projects that are going to drive forward not just our economy here in BC, but the national economy at a time that the national economy is under direct threat and attack by Donald Trump.
Now, I've just proven, and again, previous episodes, Donald Trump is nothing but another rattle that's going off in people's ears that this guy and propaganda is trying to use in order for these losers to stay in power. We were already plummeting people. It was already obvious. It's just now most people are so focused on the TDS Trump syndrome that they forgot the reality of where we were before he was even elected. People were fleeing the country. Homelessness, suicide, drug deaths, every single bad aspect that can happen within a society, poverty, starvation, food bank, is on record highs and was like on a escalator. Trump has just exposed it even more. He's allowed these companies who were in dire straits to actually have a place that they can go to now. And he's taking advantage of it. Elbows up.
The problem that we have is that Premier Smith continues to advance a project that is entirely taxpayer funded,
That's a lie.
has no private sector proponent,
That's a lie.
is not a real project,
That's a lie.
and is incredibly alarming to British Columbians, including First Nations along the coast,
That's a lie.
whose support is required for the success of the billions of dollars in real projects that I'm talking about. We need a major projects office at the federal level, not a major distractions office, not a major politics office, but an office that advances real shovel-ready projects that will move this economy forward in British Columbia and nationally. And what I am seeing from Alberta directly threatens that. So I am all for working closely with Alberta on electrical intertie that's going to drive down electrical rates for Alberta consumers. On the hydrogen sector, that is, we both need the federal government to assist us with getting hydrogen to market to build that economy.
By the way, the electricity costs on that will go up, not down. And now he's saying government subsidized, government taxpayer subsidized.
On other major infrastructure projects and projects that have real private sector backing that aren't entirely taxpayer-funded wedge politics. And that's my commitment to Albertans and to Canadians. We'll do that work with them, but it cannot be at the expense of major projects in British Columbia that are ready to go.
Right. Taxpayer funded.
To me, this seems a little bit risky if you don't have some sort of promise from Ottawa that these 9 laws are going to be repealed. So do you know something we don't know?
Well, we've limited our risk because we've allocated $14 million to get it through the first couple of stages of technical design. I just have confidence that if we fix the investment climate and get an agreement with the federal government to move forward on this on the major projects list, that proponents will step up and it will be built with private sector money. I've said all along that if the only way to build a pipeline is with taxpayer dollars, then this will have been a failed exercise. We actually have to create an investment climate so the private sector feels some confidence in investing in these kinds of projects again. It needed to be kickstarted because if we won't see a proponent until we have the laws fixed, and so we're prepared to be the proponent to get it to that point.
Perfect. And then obviously there's going to be a little bit of pushback here. We already have the Premier to the west of us calling this not realistic, essentially a distraction. So how do you plan to deal with some of the opponents to this project, whether it's the Premier next door, whether it's some of these Indigenous groups, whether it's just activists who don't want a pipeline?
Well, I would say this, that, if we had been able to redraw the map at the founding of Alberta, maybe we would have drawn it with a little bit of British Columbia so that we had a port. Maybe
I love it.
Would have been part of Alberta as opposed to part of British Columbia. But we didn't have a country.
Right on,
Instead,
Premier.
to make sure that we were a country, we built the Trans-Canada Railroad, we built the Trans-Canada Highway. We've partnered with British Columbia to ensure that their natural gas can make it through Alberta, through a pipeline to get to the U.S. market. And we've wanted to make sure that all of the goods that come into British Columbia, into their ports, have free entry and free access through Alberta. That's the deal. that we have. I think that coastal provinces have a special obligation to be generous in making sure that we're creating access to ports for all of our products. I know that Alberta shares that view. I have not publicly opposed any project that has been proposed by any of my premierial counterparts. I'm very supportive of any of their aspirations, and we're going to make sure that we can find areas of common ground. I would say about this project in particular, it was approved. It was going to go ahead, and yet a political decision canceled it. So this was a shovel-ready project some 10 years ago, and now it's a matter of seeing with the technical changes, with some of the advancement technology, with some of the things that we know, about building to the coast, with some of the new expectations about Indigenous equity ownership. Now we're going to see if we can revitalize that and maybe have a shortcut, because it was ready to go just a short time ago. So I will continue, as I said.
Yeah. Well, okay, Evie.
Premier, are there any conditions in which you would accept a pipeline to BC's North Coast? And is there a chance that the Prime Minister could give the go-ahead to this project without BC's consent? So what have your conversations been with the Prime Minister about whether or not it could go ahead if BC?
I love watching him squirm like the worm that he is.
He objects.
My message in the quiet rooms with the Prime Minister, with the Premier of Alberta, is the exact same as the message that I'm delivering to you here today. There is no project proponent. This is a taxpayer-funded initiative by the taxpayers of Alberta currently, proposed to also be the taxpayers of Canada through the publicly owned Trans Mountain Pipeline project as well. This pipeline...
Pardon me. So it's not taxpayer funded. Danielle Smith has been against taxpayer funded or government owned socialist nationalized oil projects, which she stated since day one. But he's good with state funded, taxpayer paid for Trans Mountain. This guy, he's talking circles. He's really good at it. This is hilarious to watch.
And project requires a tanker ban off the coast to be lifted if, hypothetically, a proponent was ever found. Now that tanker ban is in place. It is foundational for British Columbians who value our coast. It is foundational for First Nations whose consent we have sought and obtained for literally tens of billions of dollars of major projects that are real, that are not taxpayer funded, that will drive forward the BC and the Canadian economy for years to come. And so the challenge that I have is that this proposal from the Alberta Premier for taxpayers to do this work comes at the expense of real private sector projects that are going to lift our economy and lift the national economy, and for no apparent reason other than one can only assume politics. And so all I can say is let's stay focused on real projects, is what I say to the Prime Minister, is what I say to the Premier of Alberta. There's so much we can do together to improve the lives of Albertans and British Columbians and Canadians. And let's focus on those shovel-ready projects with real proponents that don't have to be funded by taxpayers.
Yeah, ask Eli Ross about that. Everything he said, I'm going to debunk here near the end of the video. I'm just going to expose the foreign interference that kept him in power and put the Liberals in power before. He's the same machine. The Liberals and the NDP are the same machine. They're the same. And they don't care about you. They don't care about the environment. Everything they say is a lie. And I just absolutely love exposing the lies. He's doing this to keep political power, because everything that got him and the Liberals into power, and that has decimated BC. BC is in really bad shape.
Following up on that, could you talk a little bit about what kind of conversations, if any, you've had with Premier Eby recently leading up to this? Has he been given the heads up that this was coming? And how confident are you that, it's possible to persuade him that this is in Canada's interest?
I did give him a courtesy call on Monday to let him know that this was coming. And I saw his initial reaction, and obviously we have some work to do. I mean, I understand the priorities that he has on some of the projects that have come forward. And as I said, we're very supportive. We're very supportive of a optimization of the Trans Mountain pipeline that might add another 275,000 barrels a day. We think that's a great project. We're very supportive.
Now, don't forget, he was also the one saying, "Oh, it's not even full. It's not even full." And then the truth came out where actually you're lying about your numbers. So were the Liberals. So was propaganda media. It wasn't at half. It was at near full capacity. And the reason it wasn't was because, yes, the people who are invested into it, the sideliners, the actual people making money like Carney and Brookfield, they're in court right now because they have excluded companies that had contracts that were supposed to be able to put oil in there. And they don't want to because they can't afford to because of the exorbitant costs. That pipeline cost way more than it should have ever cost. Took way longer than it should have to build. And is greasing the palms of foreign investors. The money is leaving Canada. So yeah, there's a little bit of a tax that we're getting off of it, sure. But they've taken the Canadian companies out. And now you have foreign investors who are in.
Of all of the natural gas development, LNG Canada too, which is on the list, as well as Silisms and others that have been indicated that might get there. We think that that is going to be good for not only British Columbia, but also for us. We're also very supportive of talking about ways in which we can build interties so that we can assist BC in times where they have drought, in being able to provide a secure energy backup and vice versa. We have a biodiesel facility that is up in operation. Most of that is destined for the BC market with their clean fuel standards, and we hope to do more of that. So I like to build with the other premiers on areas in which we agree. We don't always agree on everything all the time, but I think we've got a lot of common ground to start from. And I think as we continue on and build the relationships that will be able to I hope win him over. I might want to get my Indigenous Relations Minister though to respond to that too.
They could shut down a lot of the backup energy that BC needs, like she said, in droughts. This is the problem. Everybody's screaming climate change, and we've got to build dams for electricity. Well, if the temperature is going up and water is evaporating and we're having huge droughts, where is your hydropower? It doesn't exist, let alone the fact that pretty much everybody should know dams are some of the heaviest GHG producers, and how they pollute and contaminate the aquifers of the areas around them has been out for years, but is starting to really spread. Again, thanks to viewers like you who share information and try and get it to people so they're not, well, uneducated about the realities of this whole green energy scam. Let's go back and listen to Eby and watch him sweat.
Yeah, just turning back to the pipeline, you've expressed your point of view, and I'm
He's
just
getting
wondering
sadder
what
and
would you
sadder.
do if there is something that seems to be gaining traction, whether it's from taxpayers in Alberta or otherwise. We've heard previous premiers like Premier Horgan talk about throwing every tool in the toolkit to prevent such a thing from happening. What's your position? What would you do to, prevent a oil tanker ban being lifted, or what can BC do to stop this? And also, if you wanted to weigh in on the assault of the neighbor by the ostrich farm, I'd welcome a response to that too.
Okay. So on the pipeline project, my priority as the Premier of British Columbia is to ensure that we're delivering projects that are going to lift up the BC economy, give families good, high quality, high paid jobs so they can respond to some of the cost pressures they're seeing, that's going to create revenue for public services that people need and deserve. The proposals being advanced from Alberta are just that. They are sketched out on a piece of paper. There is no proponent. It is entirely taxpayer funded. And the fact that there is not a private proponent, despite obviously huge willingness on the part of Alberta to subsidize this using tax dollars, should tell you everything you need to know about the reality of this project, which is that it is not a real project. The real projects that we have that are going to support families, support the province, support the country in this time of economic peril are put directly at threat by this proposal because this proposal causes the First Nations along the coast and many British Columbians, myself included, who value our coast, to believe that the coast is under threat, which it is not. And so I think I've said it 5 different ways. I'll say it again. Let's stay focused on the shovel-ready real projects and proceed in that direction. On the ostrich farm.
Now, the ostrich farm thing, I'm going to let him go on this just so you could hear it and then straighten this out.
Alleged assault. Obviously, this is incredibly alarming. I just hope that everybody can help work to take the temperature down here. And I hope this victim is okay, as okay as possible in the circumstances. Nobody wants to see violent attacks like this, and it doesn't serve any interest anywhere, regardless of where you are on the issue. And so I send my best wishes to her. All
right, so from what I know, the whole thing was a setup. I talked about this. I actually had an episode on it. There's actually footage of the perpetrator, all black, wearing a mask, who didn't even, wasn't part of any of the people who are trying to protect the ostriches, had no affiliation to the BC ostrich farm. They arrested a guy that the girl blamed, said it was him, and then after seeing the footage realized she was lying. And if you watch the footage, you can see she's acting. She's literally acting. She starts screaming way before the guy even gets there. The whole thing is a show. Propaganda. This is what they do. This is what they did during the Freedom Convoy. This is what Trudeau did with his photographer with the whole waving the German flag. These people are in masks. People who are proud and stand up for what is righteous, what is morally, proper, what is a good fight, do not hide their faces. No freedom convoyers hid their faces. If you see one and their face is hid, they are not part of the convoy. Same thing with the ostrich farm. This guy, it was a setup. Don't worry. We're going to keep on top of this when they find out who it is and they start to expose it, because propaganda will not let you know. They will hide this from you, but we will. We will keep you informed. Now, moving on.
Thank you, Premier. So like the Premier, I was on the phone on Monday calling many Indigenous leaders, both in BC and Alberta, and the responses were different from what you may have expected about 10 years ago, 8 years ago. There was more support than I had anticipated, and of course there are concerns about environmental protections. But the fact that we're engaging early and we're being transparent and having very respectful conversations certainly helps. This is not consultation. We're just talking about the initiative, and I have heard from many Indigenous leaders that they're very interested in equity ownership and being part of this energy infrastructure. So we're pleased with what we've heard. We know that there's a lot of work to do, and engagement has to be frequent, and it has to be, as I said before, transparent and very respectful. Thank you.
And I had a follow-up actually for you, Minister Sawhney. I'm fortunate that you're up here. In your opening remarks, you alluded to, learning from past mistakes. So I'm wondering if you could elaborate on what was done, say, in the Northern Gateway era that you're hoping to do differently this time.
So what we've heard, both from industry and Indigenous leaders, is that Indigenous voices were not central to the process as Northern Gateway was being discussed. So we've learned from that. We've spoken to Indigenous leaders and again in industry as well, and they've provided some additional feedback and advice. And the key piece of advice was to pick up the phone, go to the community, meet people where they're at, and tell them what it is that you hope to do, and really listen to their concerns and do whatever you can to alleviate or mitigate. So those are some of the learnings that we're taking with us, and we're certainly going to spend a lot more time in the engagement process.
Thank you. We're going to take 2 more questions from the floor here and then go to the phone.
Now, the big kicker, too, is that a lot of them are actually seeing what has happened with, especially Eli Ross. And again, I urge you, check out my previous episodes. They are seeing the wealth that has been created by this natural gas terminal and how all of the partnerships that were made to the Indigenous communities and nations that are part of it, the wealth that is coming from it. which is taking the poverty away, giving the ability for First Nations to have direct jobs linked and within their nations. They don't have to leave. They can stay where they are. They're part of what's going on. They get to use a lot of the funds that are being made from these deals to build better schools, better, well, anything and everything that they want. And then all of the nations that were against it, that got, well, they lost out on the deal, are watching this pouting, going, well, what the hell? Boy, did we blow it. And even better is they're seeing that the organizations like Tides Foundation and the rest of them that help put the Liberals and the NDP, Mr. Eby himself, in power, as well as the Federal Party. Don't forget, they're the ones that actually changed the Canadian election. They played a large role in getting the turd and his minions elected. They are seeing firsthand that those organizations, once they got what they wanted, left them. And now they're sitting there wallowing in emptiness, in poverty. Nothing ever came from them. They signed a deal with the devil. These realizations are starting to come forward. Let's move on.
Hi, good morning, Premier. Thank you for taking my question. You probably saw the announcement this morning from the Bank of Canada regarding the overnight lending rate. The Bank of Canada speaks of a weakening economic climate. You yourself, your government as a whole, has acknowledged strong economic headwinds. And today we have a BCGEU public sector union rally downtown Vancouver. We could see a similar event next week in front of the legislature when it resumes. Based on the current economic projections, based on the genuine labor unrest that we're facing in this province, how would you rate the theory that British Columbia is about to enter its own winter of discontent, the way the United Kingdom experienced in the 1970s, low economic growth, high labor unrest? Thank you.
I would say that's absurd. And
is it really? We're going to prove that.
The reasons are pretty straightforward. British Columbia has literally tens of billions of dollars of economic projects that are ready to go, that we are accelerating. We are going to lead the country in direct investment.
Now, direct investment. Everything he's been bitching about with Alberta, that's what he wants to do. Direct investment. That means using tax dollars in order to get these companies over hurdles so that the companies can then build the projects with their own money. Every single project that he's talking about can't be built unless they punt the Indigenous, punt the taxpayer, punt the citizens, get rid of all debate. Oh, Bill C-5. What the Liberals gave themselves power to do, which he gave himself power to do. He's in trouble. He's in big trouble. How big of trouble? This is Canada and the US states by GDP per capita. Look very carefully. Northwest Territories is ranked up there pretty good. None of it ranked up there pretty good. Now you got to remember, this is because they have such a small, I'm talking minuscule population. But if you scroll down the list and you keep on going, you will see again the Yukon. Small, very small population. Keeps them high on the list. But if you get down to higher population, where there's an actual very comparable population to actual corporate and individual growth, you start to see the reality of what's really going on. There is Alberta. Keep going. Missouri, Vermont, Saskatchewan. Now you got to really keep going. Idaho, South Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, West Virginia. Then you see Newfoundland. Then you see British Columbia. Isn't that wild? It's funny how all of the liberal provinces are the poorest provinces. Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. But yeah, Mississippi, I mean, again, these are broken states that, by the way, Trump is already uplifting. This is in 2022. These numbers are going to start changing really fast because the clean coal. Trump has ignited these old plants. Companies are going in there spending billions of dollars, and these suckers are going to be up and running. And then you're going to see their GDP surpass. So it won't be long. In another year or two, you will see all of these liberal provinces well below the poorest of the poorest in the United States. So, EB, everything you say is bullshit. Everything you say.
I want to go back to the pipeline. Obviously, this pipeline has been in the news. This metaphysical pipeline has been in the news for some time now. But how much heads up did your office get about the announcement from Danielle Smith? One might argue that it sort of blindsided a lot of people. Obviously, as I said, we've had this discussion sometime. But can you sort of talk about the atmospherics between you and Premier Smith about the announcement that we're having today? Thank you.
Now, Premier Danielle Smith is brilliant. She's definitely the brightest bulb out of all of the shattered bulbs and blown out candles like this guy that are supposed leaders of provinces. Do you really think she was going to give him any type of information that would allow him to retaliate and use the propaganda media against her resources, her citizens, her voters? And this falls in where I am as well, because Saskatchewan is linked to this. We supply a lot of oil that helps lubricate the seriously thick oils so they can go through these pipes. We are inexplicably linked to Alberta. When you're in either of our provinces, you will hear us refer to each other as brothers. Most people around here and in Alberta say Western independence, because if either one of us left, the other would follow. That's how tight we are, which also explains why we're so far up on the list when it comes to GDP.
Absolutely. There's no sort of personal animosity or bad feelings between me and Premier Smith. She called
Oh, really?
me and gave me a heads up about her announcement. I asked her two very straightforward questions. Is there a private company advancing this proposal? The answer is no. Is there any private money advancing this proposal? The answer is no. To my mind, that means this is not a project that is in competition with the real multi-billion-dollar private sector projects being advanced by British Columbia. To Premier Smith, this is just a road bump. We have a very different perspective on that, and I understand why she would want to be talking about that. But I really feel that for the benefit of Albertans, for the benefit of British Columbians, we have a ton of projects that we can work on together, including projects that allow additional market access for oil producers in Alberta that don't involve the tanker ban or the North Coast, involve the existing publicly owned pipeline that all Canadians own right now. And so, those are,
back to the
areas where I believe-
taxpayer. It's funny how he keeps bringing that back up. So he's so against taxpayer-funded pipelines getting any type of Alberta resources to market, but he keeps falling back on how great the taxpayer-owned and built and funded pipeline is. Unbelievable. This guy is such a moron.
we should be focusing our attention. She's going to focus her attention where she chooses, and hopefully we can find a path forward to work together.
Okay. Let's hear it from the man.
How did, could you speak a little bit to the volume of this pipeline? How did the 1 million barrels per day size, how was that arrived at? And also, what is the producer's perspective on this? You spoke about why the pipeline firms aren't necessarily going to their board directors with, looking for authorization to proceed with, as a private proponent leading this charge. What is the producer perspective, though? Are these producers prepared to commit barrels?
Those are good questions, Megan. I'll try to hit them. I don't know if I'll do it in the exact order, but I think it goes without saying, and the Premier talked about this a little bit in her comments. Alberta has some of the best oil and gas resource in the entire world, depending on who you look at. We're third or fourth overall. We have the world's most stringent environmental rules. We have the rule of law. We are a safe place to invest. Companies would love to invest in growing production in this province, but there's a really sad reality right now, is that it doesn't do my company or any company any good right now to materially grow production if we cannot get that production to global markets. And that's the problem we find ourselves in right now. And if we were able to have a regulatory regime that was understandable, transparent, but people understood what it would take to get projects permitted, to get pipelines permitted and built, I think you'd see an incredible renaissance of growth coming out of the Alberta oil and gas sector. In terms of 1 million barrels, and maybe the Premier, the Minister might want to talk about that too, but I think 1 million it's a nice round number. I think it is a scale of growth that our industry can chin up to over the next decade or so if we have that pipeline. If we're able to permit and build that pipeline, I think that's something that the Alberta industry could do. We could fill that pipeline over a reasonable period of time, and it would be a huge benefit to the Canadian economy, all the provinces, and obviously the people of Alberta.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll take one more from the mic here and then head to the phones. Hi, this is a question for Alex. It's Chris Markle from the Calgary Herald.
This is where the truth really gets to come out. And I love the fact that you can see they were waiting. This whole news conference has been kicking propaganda in the nards. If you don't know what nards are, you're a little young, watch some classic movies. Wolfman does have nards. Anyways, he exposes all the lies of EB right here.
Alex, in a previous career, you had some involvement in pipelines, Energy East, Keystone XL, and you know how they obviously ended up.
You can see the scars on my back.
What makes you think, 10 years later, that you can secure federal support to get a project across the finish line?
I think a lot has changed, and you heard Minister Sawhney talk about that with respect to Indigenous views in many cases. But, I think right now, I'll give you my own personal take. Canada is facing great challenges with respect to our economy, affordability, housing, you name it. And we have a revenue problem with our country and with our government. And the Premier hit this in her remarks. This is truly a nation-building kind of a project. A project of this scale would add many, many billions of GDP a year to the Canadian economy, and all the benefits that would bring in terms of incremental tax revenue, employment, You know, I think Canadians have also realized that we will always have a continuing challenge about balancing environment and the economy. But I think what a lot of people have realized is that the world right now really needs energy security and it needs energy affordability. And I think there was a view maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that the oil and gas sector was a sunset industry, that all of that energy would be replaced by solar farms, wind farms, giant batteries. You know, I think the experience globally over that time is that the countries that have attempted to go down that path have had real problems with affordability. They've had problems with reliability of energy. And it has been very challenging for those countries. And I think we're at a point now where Canadians appreciate that there has to be a balance between the environment and energy affordability, energy reliability. And that's what I think has significantly changed over that period of time.
My follow-up is for the Premier.
So in other words, everything that EB is trying to do has been tried, failed, and been found wanting. It is destructive policies. This is why UCBC, so far down the row, entering poverty. These provinces are sucking. They are sucking all of the monies from the conservative provinces, from the provinces who have just been trying to make money in the most environmentally friendly manner. No other country touches Canada, not even the United States, on the ethics that go into all of the resources within our provinces. Nobody. High wages. Environmentally friendly. They take every environmental precaution there is. We have the highest work standards. That if it wasn't for these investments and the money coming in from these revenues, thanks to the conservative governments, Canada would be completely collapsed. We would be the dystopia that the Liberals are trying to create. They don't care about you. They don't care about the environment. It's all a charade. Now let's watch Eby lose his shite.
Go ahead, Justine.
Hi, thanks. Premier, I think we continue to ask you questions about the pipeline because you have in the past kind of given a range of answers that indicate that you might be willing to entertain an oil pipeline. So let me try again. You keep saying this is not a real project, but Alberta is filing an application. Will BC oppose that application, or will it be leaving that up to First Nations to oppose?
Well, Justine, I disagree with the premise of your question. We have supported the tanker ban from the very beginning because it is foundational to our ability to get some major projects done, including at the Port of Prince Rupert, including major export projects like LNG Canada that have facilitated a 4% increase in Canadian GDP.
Now, you ask Eli Ross what he thinks about that, and I'm going to attach a link so you can actually watch the truth about all of these environmental policies and how these people, they fought against it the whole time. He's trying to take credit for something that Eli and all of these nations, in order to get this gas pipeline and export facility built, had to fight. And this is why Eli is now a conservative member of Parliament. This is why he joined the Conservatives. Because he saw what was really going on, and he saw the takeover of the Liberals and NDP turn into this cult.
And to put that tanker ban at threat, it's not just a threat to our pristine coast that so many British Columbians, including myself, value, but it is a direct economic threat to the kind of economy that we're trying to build in the country here. And so when I've said, let's cross that bridge when we come to it, We'll see what the Premier comes up with. I'm being polite.
Oh, tell us how you really
I am
feel.
being polite. There is no project. There is no bridge to cross unless the Albertan government and the federal Canadian government are committing billions of taxpayer dollars to build this project. And if that is the plan, then they should be transparent about it. Don't mistake my politeness for weakness on protecting our economy and our coast. Now, I hope that clears things up, but let's cross that bridge once she's got a proponent in the money.
And now we know she does. And now we know every single oil company is waiting and would love to invest. They've been dying to invest. But they're not going to come forward and try and put any type of a proposal together when you have these 9 horrific laws that were put in, backed by idiots like this, who come to power from...
Whether it was the Rockefellers' intention or not, what is being protected is the American...
Now, I'm going to have to play a little bit of my own background music in here to flood out these songs, because if not, then I get major copyright infringements and suffer even more of the everyday censorship that I go through. So please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I will try to keep it turned down just high enough so that I can kind of flood out the music.
Monopoly. It has Canada over a barrel and is subsidizing the price of gas in the United States to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. Now, under Justin Trudeau, the federal government has banned oil tanker traffic on the north coast of BC with Bill C-48. They call it a tanker ban, but actually it's an export ban because it doesn't stop any of the oil tankers from Alaska or anywhere else from importing oil into the lower 48.
The Great Bear Rainforest is no place for a pipeline.
Offensive, strangling, devastating. Those were just some of the words used to describe Bill C-48 today. That bill would essentially ban all oil tanker traffic off the coast of British Columbia.
So when we started talking about coastal protection, hooray, we got no. C-48 went through, it won by 3 votes. We're not going to have tankers on the north coast. Everybody celebrates. Not a time to celebrate because 8.6 billion gallons of crude went by Haida Gwaii from Valdez alone to the lower 48 last year. And 278 ships are going by Haida Gwaii every year, without question. This is going on. So,
and I had family and friends that lived out there that they were thinking this was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we were bringing this, and this was years ago, way before my channel. This years ago, we were arguing with them, going, "Are you aware? Like, right by your house, you don't see those tankers? Those aren't Canadian tankers. Those are American tankers. So it's good for them, but not for us. Are you aware of the hypocrisy of what you're saying?" And they literally fought tooth and nail, ignorant as you could possibly be, and argued that we were all full of crap because of propaganda. Propaganda, people.
We don't have protection.
We are price takers, we are not price getters, and that needs to change. When I see, if one of my neighbors was doing that to me, I'd get bloody angry about it.
The organizations that have led the charge to create the Great Bear Rainforest are Tides Canada and Coastal First Nations.
We heard it far too many times at our table, Tides Canada. And we heard some people were too happy to tell us that, well, we know where they're getting their money from. They're getting it from Tides Canada. And you know what? They're getting millions.
Back in 2004, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund paid $1 million for the capital to create Coastal First Nations and another $100,000 for startup. And then on Christmas Eve, 2004, a non-profit called the Coast Economic Development Society was incorporated. But as far as I can tell, it was financially inactive for the next 3 years until it got funding from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the same foundation that funds the campaign against salmon farming and has since poured at least $270 million into activism in Canada. Coastal First Nations, $30 million, Tides Canada, at least $85 million, one grant alone in 2015 for $10 million.
well, we knew there was some pretty heavy-duty money coming in from somewhere because the aggression was too strong and it was too directed. And it was directed to any group that dare spoke about anything oil and gas. And not once did they ever attempt to ask us what our place was within that industry.
This issue is as black and white as a killer whale. Saying no to the Enbridge pipeline is as black and white as the killer whales that are threatened by that pipeline.
The crowd was led to dance like Canadian animals such as the orca.
I mean, we're underdogs, sure. But some movements have spent billions of dollars going nowhere. I know I've spent some of it. As a digital guy, I spent my career for a lot of clients building fake grassroots campaigns that tried to surround a target and make it seem like there was a social movement happening and scare them into making a decision.
Don't spend your time on environmental protection and getting First Nation youth who are unemployed and angry. Don't get them to protest against projects. It's the same teenagers who commit suicide day in and day out within our communities. It is so unfair and cruel. It's a human crisis that these environmentalists don't care about.
I'd never wanted my kids to go through what I went through, going from job to job, to unemployment insurance, to welfare. I mean, I grew up through the 80s and 90s as a young man, struggling to find a job. I got into drugs when I was 14 years old, and it just seemed natural. Nobody thought it was a bad thing. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, me and my wife were talking about it, and I was trying to put into context for people what it really meant at the ground level for people like us. And just off the top of our heads, we recounted 14 people who committed suicide that I had to go to funerals for in my lifetime.
Those agendas, they're basically taking advantage of the situation that we're in, and that's poverty. And I think that when they come in with their own agendas and write checks, and it's self-serving, and they're basically just using us, and these environments come in and pay us, and then they're gone, and the agendas, you know, they got what they accomplished, and we're still sitting here in poverty.
If I'm gonna say no to something, I better find another way to put a meal on the man's table or his family's. Just don't say no and walk away, you know, because that's irresponsible and that's almost genocidal.
They came in and they propped up the minority and they turned it into a big fight where Haislas were fighting against Haislas. We ended up in court, tore our community apart, tore our family apart, and then when all the dust settled and we realized, actually, all that wasn't true. It was all built on a lie.
And it was. And I am going to make sure that I'll end up posting this link later. It will be posted on this video. This is the reality of EB. This is the reality of what a lot of Canada has succumbed to. Propaganda from outside influence in order to stop Canada from being the greatest nation in the world. We could have been here generations ago, but we have constantly allowed outside money. First, it started with the Laurentian elites. Then it grew into globalism. And this is why you see anybody who says the New World Order or talks about a world order or talks about a global council, anything to deal with all of the world being together and united in one democracy, is a loony. Has no idea of why people flee to other countries. Anybody in Canada who thinks that we should be part of this New World Order has either lost their roots or has no basic understanding of history. Why would you run from another nation? Fear of your life, living in poverty, just everything about it evil and against the goodness of who you are, the persecution against you and your family. To come to a country to then allow the country you ran from to have a say in the country you are now part of. Globalism is bullshit. Globalism is another propaganda word that is put out there, making you think that you're going to be part of this larger, loving, altogether the whole world united, when in actual effect, it is there to take away your rights, to take away your vote, to take away your resources, your jobs, your entrepreneurship, and to force you to work harder for less for the profit of the few. That's just the reality of it. And Alberta, with the lead of Danielle Smith, and like I said, the greatest premier in Canada right now, and she is definitely burning the mark to becoming one of the best of all time if she keeps doing what she's doing. And if it ends up with Alberta separating, well, guess what? She will be the best, because if it takes that big of a step to try to fix Canada, then it's success. Or Canada realizes, thanks to you by like, sharing, and subscribing, that yes, Canada's broken and we can make a difference, and we have to try. And there's only one way to do it, people. Like, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. There's lots more going on, but with that bombshell coming out and EB losing his shite, I just had to do an episode on it. And of course, exposing him for who he is. I got lots to work on. I hope you guys have a great day. Until next time, I'm Alias Tagay. You've been watching Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.